Welcome to this episode of Sunny's Silver Linings. Sunny's guest today is Paul Cissel. After receiving his MBA in finance, Paul has dedicated over 40 years to the IT industry. He's the founder of 3 IT startup companies and currently is the CEO of Growth Caddie. In this episode, Paul deep dives into the 5 important metrics that MSP owners should use to run their business profitably and successfully. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kaila. Over to you, Sunny.
Paul, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast today. I really appreciate your time and thank you for joining me today.
I've been looking forward to it, Sunny. It's always a pleasure to converse with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paul. And I really respect, that you just have gone through a major surgery, and only a true entrepreneur can do this. Just within a couple of weeks, you are doing your peer group facilitations to you're back to kind of back in the channel, adding value, and you are on this podcast with me. And that is the true entrepreneurial spirit and DNA. No matter what's happening around you, you're going to still make progress.
Well, thank you. I think all of us entrepreneurs are a little numb in some respect.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have that entrepreneurial bias. And so, Paul, you have done very, very successful journey that you traveled as an entrepreneur, as especially MSP entrepreneur, with 3 MSPs. So very successful exit with 3 IT solution provider business that you have had. And the most recent, internet and telephone, acquired by one of a really large MSP, and so OnePath, and had a lot of success. And along with that, 34 M&A transactions, and probably a lot more that you're involved with, but 34 transactions that you have completed. And along with that, with the peer groups, a facilitation that you do, and you give back a lot to the MSP community. And on top of that, you guide businesses how to run these businesses using EOS type of best-in-class, world-class framework. So much wisdom, so much experience. And I'm just so excited to have you on my podcast and share that experience and wisdom with our MSP friends.
Well, thanks. I'm looking forward to it. It's been I've been fortunate through my journey. I've always looked at experts in the industry, and I've never really seen myself as an originator, more of a plagiarizer. Being able to take best practices since other people have learned through the School of Hard Knocks, and be able to put them together and run good, solid companies.
And so talk to me a little bit about, you have done so many transactions and you have seen so many balance sheets and what it takes in terms of reviewing data and making decisions based on that data when you are buying a company or selling a company. So talk to us, what is that process? What are the questions that you go through? So what good looks like in terms of a well-run company, and how do you identify that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sunny. Because you're not initially just looking at income statements and balance sheets. You're talking to people like, you and I met at a bar at a peer group meeting. And the first questions, there's a series of questions that I ask every owner, and particularly MSP owners, which kind of get down to kind of the 5 metrics we're going to talk about today. But first and foremost, so let's define the MSPs that we're talking about, because there's a lot of different types out there. Mm-hmm. The ones that I'm talking about are what are known as infrastructure managed services. So they probably have a revenue mix of 50 to 60% recurring revenue, probably 20 to 30% product revenue, and somewhere between 10 and 20% ad hoc labor services. So that mix kind of matters, but I think that's the world that you and I play in mostly, and most of the people out there that we know. So the first thing I want to know is once we've established, what their product mix is really what their revenue is. That's the first question I think that any of us ask.
Yeah.
The next question I ask is how many employees they have. And then I do the quick division and really come up with the amount of annual revenue per employee. So a well-run company will have $200,000 per year per employee or more. A very well-run company will be in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $300,000 per year per employee. So that gives me an idea of how well the owner and the manager are managing their resources overall. And then from there, I really try to find out what their overall service gross margin percentage is. So of that service revenue that they have, divided by the service cost. That service cost is it's a combination of everything, of all those costs that are part of the service factory. Those are the number of employees, the number in the service department there, the cost of the tools there, those items, and we really look for a service gross margin of somewhere in the neighborhood of greater than 50%. So that tells me that is a well-run service factory. But there's as part of that, how does leadership run a service factory well? It's really where the rubber meets the road as far as management is concerned. Yeah. So diving under the covers, there's levers that we all know, right? There's the price of our product. So is our product priced appropriately when we sell it to give it to the service department? Yeah. It is the number of people and payroll of the service department, our tool cost, and then we get into how well are our technicians trained, and on top of that, how effective our customer onboarding and our documentation is. So all that comes around to really looking at a service gross margin of greater than 50%. So that's really important. So a metric to look at. We know there's a lot. We're very fortunate in our industry to have a lot of well-educated gurus, and you've had a lot on your show. And depending upon which guru you look at and what metric, one of them uses a metric, service W2 to service revenue of 2.7 or higher. Another one really looks at having a fully loaded service payroll of no greater than 40% and probably around 35% with a tool cost of 6 to 8%. So, at the end of the day, this is the what I call the first and greatest MSP commandment. Whenever an MSP asks me what they should be paying for a salary for somebody, I tell them just look at the mix and don't go above 35% of service salaries to service revenue. It's pretty simple to be able to run it that way. Yeah. The next item I look at is I go from there down to trying to get a sense of their overall blended gross margin, which is really just adding the product onto that. So the hardware and software that they sell. So that's the additional lever. And they should be somewhere from a product gross margin of greater than 25%. So that leads us to look at a total blended gross margin dollars of 40%. So that creates the pool of money that we're able to spend. We're not able to spend gross revenue, right?
Yeah.
We're only able to spend gross margin dollars.
Yeah.
So once we have that pool, that's what we have to spend on MG&A, and the profit is what's left over, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One question that I normally get, and I want to get your advice on, how you handled in your operations or businesses that you advise. I know you're on a lot of advisory boards for many MSPs. Common question that I get, Sunny, my labor cost is that 35%, but sometimes when I need to grow, and I'm a high growth MSP, I need to hire in advance so that I can handle more business. I need to build my capabilities. I need to, that means I cannot manage my labor cost up to this, because if I do that, either I put more load on people with more agreements coming first before I bring in labor to deliver on that, or the other way around, when you don't have business and you are kind of really having people on the bench. And so how do you handle that? Is there any golden rule where you can kind of manage that, the labor cost to the revenue, and being also building your capabilities for your coming growth?
Yeah, to a degree. Remember the old movie, Field of Dreams? Build it and they will come. Where the guy built a baseball field hoping that people showed up. That the data shows us that does not work in our marketplace. So some people think that, I have to spend a lot more money than the metrics say on my sales force, because I'm a growth company, or on my service department because I need to keep up with sales. When I've been really fortunate to be able to have access to a lot of this data and look at 17, 18 years of data. And when you look at the best performing companies out there, they stick right on these numbers, and they're able to grow their businesses with these metrics, 2.7 times the service W2 to service revenue, et cetera. And the way that they do it is they build a great farm team. They don't. A lot of companies will say, "Well, I've got to build it for my service department." So I have to go out there and get level 2, level 3 techs, at $80,000, $100,000 a year, and they're not going to be able to stick at those numbers like that. But if they build a great farm team and consistently bring in and train younger people and mentor them, that's what these companies are doing, and that's how they're able to manage to that.
Yeah, that's great advice. So have that little bit of range probably defined, right? That sometimes when you have a little bit of extra capability, then you're probably on the high end of that scale. But is that 35% is the cap? Because I know we were part of the same peer group, and sometimes that in my group discussions, at least, it's 32 to 35% or 32 to 37%. So if you manage your direct labor cost before you put the tool cost on top of that, so have that little bit of range that that, okay, if I go towards the upper side, then I have some bandwidth in terms of my labor hours, or my consulting hours are available to take on more business. If you're on the lower end, then it's you're putting a more load on people. So 2 points. One, what is that? Two questions actually. One is there any range that you suggest? Number one, and the second is, with this entry-level people or farm team that you're talking about, is there any best practice in terms of timeline that you suggest?
So first of all, in range, we see ranges of a good overall kind of mature best-in-class range is 30 to 40%, and you want to be at 35%. if you're running an efficient service factory at 40%, the techs will be screaming. I mean, for real, right? Any service organization you go into, they're always going to be complaining about there being underappreciated. But in reality, if you creep up to 38-40%, you're starting to bulge at that seam. So I wouldn't go any higher than that. Another way to really take a look at this is with the reactive group, take a look at the reactive tickets that you have.
Mm.
And most firms will have, and classify them by level 1, level 2, level 3. And most firms will have 60 to 70% level 1 tickets that a level 1 tech can take care of, 20% level 2, and maybe 5 to 10% level 3 or escalated tickets, right?
Yeah.
You see that in your firm. So why do you need 90% level 3 techs and 10% level 1 techs? You should have 70% of your techs be level 1 techs that are all in the $30,000 to $45,000 pay range, and level 2 techs should match those level 2 tickets, and same with your level 3 techs. Yeah. So that really gives you kind of a base. It's a triangle with the most people at the bottom on the base of the triangle being those level 1 techs.
Yeah, that's a great point. A majority of the MSP owners that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of them every month, our partners and our Build It partners and our ITBD service partners, I see that people have done well in 2020 in terms of EBITDA. And one reason when I ask questions is they were very intentional about managing their costs, because scary time starting during March, and everyone was kind of they were more religious in terms of reviewing their numbers, not committing to additional expenses, because they wanted to build their emergency fund. And as a result, you see that a lot of people have done well. A lot of MSPs have done well, unless they were not managed service providers. So now I see that, to your point, that people are a little bit more liberal in terms of committing to expenses in the interest of growth or whatever their reasons are. But you see that the profitability trend goes down. And it's a very interesting observation. And the next question, Paul, to you is, as they say, revenue is vanity and profits are sanity. Without profits, right, entrepreneur cannot be successful. It's, that profit gives you options, right? And like everyone talks about these numbers in peer groups, but a lot of people don't end up doing well there in terms of profits. Do you see something which is common in those best-run companies where they consistently produce better profits? Is there anything common that you see? And is there any advice that you have that, okay, if, with these 5 numbers that are important, but here are some best practices?
Yeah, I definitely do. And, but first I want to say is that, our world overall is changing a little bit, where, you and I grew up in a world where profit was a good word. And now sometimes it's seen as it may not be that good of a word, but as owners of organizations, it is absolutely the responsibility to make sure that your organization is taking care of your employees and their families, your customers and their families, and your family. Yeah. And the way that you do that and have longevity is through profit, right?
Yeah.
So profit keeps everything going. Yep. The companies that are consistent year after year are the ones who plan for a profit. And they actually have a budget, and they go through the budget, and they go through budget versus actual. And it takes companies probably somewhere between 2 and 4 years to really be able to run the organization through a budget, and that budget is working towards a certain profit percentage that's gained through not spending too much on SG&A and knowing what their service gross margin is and knowing what their overall gross margin is. So really focused on those metrics and making sure that you're making the little changes along the way to make sure that you're achieving those metrics.
Yeah, something very powerful you just said, Paul, is at the end of the day, you have a lot of responsibility as a business owner because your people depend on that, your customers' families, your colleagues' families, your customer families. A lot of people depend on your decisions, and if you plan for profit in the interest of those families, that people that you serve. And it is critical to make sure that you plan for profit so that you are not putting these people at risk, these families at risk, because longevity, the sustainability of a business will come from the bottom line. And we got to be intentional about managing profits, managing EBITDA, planning for EBITDA, and not compromising there. And that's so good to hear that.
Yep. I like your word intentional. Yes, we have to be intentional.
Yes. And now you do a lot of transactions and you kind of advise a lot of MSPs how to go about better multiple. And my question is, I hear so many different numbers when you talk about, best in class or well-run companies where they are running with that plan for EBITDA. I want to ask you, what do you see in the channel right now? What is that, especially now in 2021? What is norm in terms of multiple that you see?
God, that's a lightning ride. Why'd you ask me that, Sonny? I mean, there's a lot of deals got paused by COVID. There is a lot of data going around now that are saying multiples are at 13 times. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing deals done where the multiples were kind of pre-COVID. So it depends upon revenue mix, revenue size, what your EBITDA is. So if you're getting 13 times, yes. If you have an EBITDA of $20 million, you may be able to get 13 times. If you have EBITDA of $500,000, I'm seeing transactions in the 7 times. But at the end of the day, it's all about a transaction is something that just in the 3 businesses that I sold, it was something that happened. It wasn't something that we were really looking for.
Yeah.
You build a great business and you're spinning off a lot of good money. Most of our friends and MSP owners make a nice living and they like that living and they have a nice lifestyle. So why am I going to sell my business and only make 3 or 4 times what I'm taking out of that business on an annual basis? I want to be able to take 8 or 10 times out of that. So the challenge in the companies that I work with is we just look at creating value. That's the job of the business, creating value. What are those things that we need to work on right now that are going to increase our value year over year? And then those are the items that we work on. And if it turns out that somebody is interested in us and it's a deal that we think is good for our people and good for our customers and good for us, then we're ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. You did. And so it matters. What matters is what are those EBITDA dollars? Because as that scale goes up, the multiple goes up. That's what I heard. And
And are those EBITDA dollars repeatable? Are they repeatable year after year?
Yes. And now last question. The state of the MSP channel. And I was reading just last week about 2020 that it was more of a K-shaped recovery and $223 billion industry and a lot of growth, even during COVID in the channel happened, and a lot of private equity money coming in with a lot of bigger players coming in, and they are playing. So it's becoming a very interesting ecosystem and the future of the channel, as far as I know, and from my publications where I go to get that information, it kind of shows that a lot of growth coming our way in the channel. So we are 282 billion. They are kind of predicting in the next year or so, and a lot of cybersecurity as a service to more of anywhere operations and distributed cloud and AI and machine learning, a lot of stuff in a distributed workforce environment and remote leadership. So a lot of stuff that is happening, which is different and very encouraging for this ecosystem for MSP community. What do you see? What do you see in the channel? Where do you think things are going in 2021 and 2022 in terms of the state of the channel?
I read and listen to all the people that you do. I think that it's healthy. That as entrepreneurs, we need to continually change. The channel is growing. The part of the channel that we really want, though, those companies that do really well don't take any customer. They don't do anything for a buck, right? They take that 25% of those end users out there that value IT, that are growing and don't beat them up, and that understand the service that they provide, and that they can make the margin that they need to. So that's the first thing. So those type of companies are still out there. They're going to be growing, and they're going to be a certain part of the channel overall. What I do see in the channel is risk is increasing, and the ability for the willingness of MSP owners to continually assume customer risk concerns me. Mm-hmm. So what I mean is their willingness to take customers who will not take their full security offering concerns me. Their willingness to take customers who don't have their own cybersecurity insurance concerns me. I think there will be, the businesses that are going to do best and going to be around for the longer period of time are the ones that figured out how to mitigate that risk. They make sure that they have the right cyber insurance, that their customers have cyber insurance, that they have a well-defined process for mitigation that they've been through, and that all of their customers have the full suite of their offering.
Yeah, and so not compromising on their standard kind of product offering, that take it or leave it, in terms of making sure that cyber security solution is well implemented and there is no compromise there, because that's a lot of business liability, and having that insurance that you mentioned is very important for them to stay in business. So that's a great point. Yeah, thank you so much.
Sunny, it's always great to talk to you. I'm thankful to be part of this industry and have friends like you, and I really, my hat's off to all the owner operators out there that are continuing to forge ahead. Love working with them.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. Thank you, and thank you so much. Like now, especially now, you are a lot more intentional with spending a lot of quality time with the channel partners, giving back to the MSP community. You have always been very active in this community. I could see you in the Northeastern meetings in the beginning when I used to go there towards Boston. And you have always been a great contributor there, a lot of contributions to the growth of this channel. And now you're giving back a lot more. And thank you so much for your contributions and coming to my podcast and sharing your experience and your wisdom and your thoughts, very valuable insights. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, and Sunny, thank you. Thank you for all you do.